Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Countesthorpe Academy Teaching and Learning presentation. I'm Mrs. Amanda McKenzie, Assistant Principal for Teaching and Learning at the college, and I'm also joined by Nicola Koncherovich, who's in charge of Teaching and Learning and Assessment across the MAT schools. She's going to join us in order to look at the chat function. And if you're not sure of how to use this, you might notice that there's a small speech bubble on your screen on whatever device you're on, in which you can open and ask any questions that you might have regarding my presentation. And that is available for you throughout the presentation today. And Nicola will be there to answer any questions you might have. Alternatively, at the end, I'll also share with you my direct email address. So if after listening to the presentation or on reflection later on, you have any further questions at all, please feel free to email me after also. So across the college, we're aiming to have consistent teaching throughout all lessons. In classrooms, students will be used to seeing our learning cycle of connect, grasp, demonstrate and review, and I'll talk about that in a few seconds. We also have some really clear classroom routines, and of course those have had to be tweaked and adapted based on the current climate that we're in. But having clear classroom routines allows for a really calm start to the lesson in order for everybody to be ready to learn. You also might recognise if your child is in one of the older year groups that we use something called Satchel 1, which used to be called Show My Homework. And that is something that teachers have been using for the last few years at the Academy to set their homework for their pupils. It's great because parents and carers can have access to have a look at the homework set and to see when it's due in and just have a look at it themselves to see if their child's completed it. We also have been using Microsoft Teams, and this is great for our setting up of home learning, which was used during lockdown, and we will be using going forward. Also, just talking back to Satchel 1, what's great about us using that for homework is also we brought into a package which is for us to be able to use the seating plans, which is great for us at the moment to be able to manage our classrooms and know where students are sat, and also a great tool just to get to know your new classes. Across the college, also within lessons, we're working on using lots of questioning strategies so that teachers are able to gauge and identify understanding and learning going on in the classroom, and also pick up and address any misconceptions and misunderstandings so that teachers can maybe go back over some parts of the topic from the lesson. And of course, additionally to that, every child is different, and within the classroom, we'll teach everything that's needed in order for students to meet the curriculum, but of course we'll scaffold and differentiate activities for our students that are in the classroom and based on their needs, and also provide stretch and challenge activities to really push our pupils as well. I'll talk a bit also about effective feedback, and a lot of the feedback now, the marking feedback for your child taking place in the classroom will be verbal with the teacher at the front, again using that questioning, giving some feedback to that for students to then use to work on and improve their work, live at the time, and staff have also been trained in whole class feedback, which can be done for homework activities and even within lessons, just a way to share with the class the successes of everybody's learning and maybe pick up some areas and activities that pupils can do in order to continue to make progress and improve on their learning. I talked a second ago about our learning cycles. The learning cycle of connect, grasp, demonstrate and review, and most lessons will consist of these areas, maybe different times for each of the areas, and also some lessons may even involve some of these structures over a number of lessons. So when a student comes into the class, we're aiming for them to have an activity in which they might retrieve some previous learning in order to help with their long-term memory. It might be an activity set up for a brand new topic for them to work on, and that's something that students would do at the beginning of lessons. And then, of course, within a lesson, there will be times when students will be grasping new learning and then demonstrating that learning that's taken place, and then finishing the lesson with a review of the learning. And like I said, sometimes this will happen fully within a lesson, sometimes this may take place over a number of lessons. So I've mentioned marking and feedback recently, and we've made some tweaks. A lot of this is based on the latest research and evidence that's out there in the educational world about how best to help students improve their work and to give really informed feedback that pupils will action. So the marking and feedback policy is based, of course, on our core values, and you'll notice on my slides at the top I've always got our values there of respect, resilience and success. Teaching and learning is at the heart of the college strategic plan, and the marking and feedback underpins all of this. All students should receive really high quality feedback from their teachers in order for them to make progress, and feedback should be used to then learn what pupils know and tell them how to improve, and that is the basis of our marking and feedback policy to date. Marking and feedback, as I said, could take many forms, and the latest research talks a lot about live marking within the lesson, picking up on things that students maybe have been successful in but maybe need some work on, actioning that at the time verbally with feedback to the students, through questioning, through the whole class feedback to say, this is great, this is what's going really well here, let's have a look at this again, let's do this activity and see how we can improve on that. Something you may have also noticed your child taken part in, or they may have mentioned from their lessons, is the use of low stakes quizzing and testing. And this may have formed part of homework activities for them in the past. And in many lessons now, we're looking at some lessons beginning or throughout some of the lessons, us putting on some low stakes multiple choice questions, a great way to gauge student understanding, maybe from previous lessons and topics they've studied. And also it's proven by using the low stakes quizzing to really assist pupils in remembering topics that they've learned previously, so it assists them with their long-term memory. Of course, on top of all of this, we will do our usual formal marking of assessments that fall in line throughout the year. And that will involve teachers giving a formal mark or a grade to a student, again with some feedback in order for them to see their successes and areas for improvement. Teachers will provide students, and they'll recognise this if you were to ask them, a WWW and an EBI, and this stands for what went well, even better if, and that forms part of our formal assessment feedback, as well as whole class feedback, and even verbally in class, students will recognise those terms. The even better if activity, what's most important about that is that students then have that time to look at the areas for improvement and actually go back and make those improvements there and then within their lesson, or potentially sometimes for a homework activity. Teachers, of course, will highlight literacy errors. That's something that's a real area for us to make improvements on across the college, and we have lots of things in place to assist our pupils, and that forms part of our marking and feedback policy also. And like I've mentioned before, pupils just need to be able to have that meaningful feedback and that time then to respond to the feedback that the teacher has provided for them, in order for them to look at what they've done well and where they've been successful, and to correct any mistakes, misconceptions and misunderstandings that they might have. You might notice that we've asked for students and their equipment to bring in a purple pen, and that's because really visually for the students, they can then see where they've made those improvements and where they've actioned feedback from their teacher. It's great for the teacher to see and great for the students to see in their books and in their work. Of course, at our school, we want to support every single one of our pupils that's in the classroom. We want to teach to the very top so that students have access to the best teaching and learning. We want to support and scaffold the work in order for all students to have access to that, so they're all looking at the same materials. And of course, we want to have the highest of expectations for all of our students, and we really do at this school. Now, part of the reason for putting on this presentation really is looking at a slight change with the current climate that we're in, and looking at something known as hybrid learning. Hybrid learning will incorporate high-quality lesson resources in line with the curriculum sequencing, which will involve lesson resources placed onto Microsoft Teams, which I'll talk about in a minute, for students that are currently at home or having to self-isolate. Teachers will include resource materials for those working at home, which might include things like PowerPoints and work booklets or reading materials, quizzes, video clips, potentially even some of the materials that are out there and resources available for schools, such as the Countesthorpe Academy lessons and BBC Bite Size. This will provide us the opportunity in the future of being able to teach a lesson in school also to some of the class and stream that lesson potentially live to any students that are at home who cannot be in school. The aims at the Academy. So we want to make sure that everybody is equipped and all teachers are equipped to plan their lessons that's accessible to all pupils. And in the past, that may have just been thinking about within the classroom. And now we're also thinking remotely so that no student is disadvantaged, whether they're in school or whether they're at home. We want to ensure that all students receive also that regular feedback that I've just been talking about, whether they're in the classroom or they're at home, and this will aid us with being able to do that. So just going over some of the things I've just discussed, we want high quality lessons and resources for all of our students in line with our curriculum plans that we have in place already. Making use of those online tools, there's some great resources out there that staff can use in line with their current lessons that make sure that students at home are still learning in the same manner in which students in school are. We want to make sure it's accessible for every single student. That includes pupils with SEN, pupils who might struggle with internet access, and we will be sending out some information soon just to gauge exactly who is going to struggle with maybe accessing Microsoft Teams and what we can do to support with that. We also want to make sure that our activities are clear for the students if they're working independently, they're chunked, modelled, so that they're able to complete those activities at home and reply and ask questions of their teachers as well. I've talked about the low stakes quizzing and testing, and one great thing about this hybrid learning model is that we can do that in the classroom, engage student understanding, but we can also do that if a student is at home. So just to finish off the presentation, I'd just like to talk through Microsoft Teams. Some of you will be using this potentially or have used it at work, maybe because of lockdown, maybe previous to that. And it's something I just want to talk people through in case some of you have never seen Microsoft Teams in action before. So Microsoft Teams is just an online software that can be accessed anywhere on any device. What's brilliant about it is that it can be accessed on anything that has some form of internet access. So that may be a phone with data, it may be an iPad or a tablet, laptop, computer, even smart TVs, Xboxes and PlayStations you can access Microsoft Teams on. When I talk about Teams a lot, and you'll hear that over the next few minutes, what I'm really talking about for us in this context for your child are their classes. It's a way for pupils to communicate with their teachers if they find themselves in a position where they're at home and needing to learn remotely. And on this platform, teachers are able to share files and work and activities for the students to do. So how can we access Microsoft Teams? There's some images here that might be a helpful guide for you. Basically, it's the easiest way is to go to Office 365 on the website. But pupils can, when they're there, log on with their Microsoft Teams account that's been set up for them by the school, which, just to make things easier, is their usual school username and school password. And when they're in there, they can select Teams. Another way in which you can access Microsoft Teams is by downloading the app onto your device. And like I said, that's something that's accessible on many different devices. So when a pupil is able to access Teams and log in, what they will see are a grid of the different teams or different classes that they are part of. Looking similar to this image here, they'll have their class name for their particular subject areas. If they want to access those materials, all they have to do is then click on that icon for their class. So if they know on a day when they're at home they have a science lesson, they'd be able to click on their science class for that day and have a look at the lesson that's been set. Within the team, they contain different areas known as channels. And in each channel there are different sections or tabs. The post section, which you can see on the right hand side of the screen, just underlined in blue, is like a big conversation where a pupil at home could potentially ask a question of their teacher if they want to check something, if they think they might misunderstand something. It may be that for some of the teams, for some of the classes for your child, that area has been disabled, and that will just be if it's believed by the teacher that it wouldn't assist with the teaching and learning. Of course, if a student needed to contact their teacher and they weren't able to use the post section, then they could just send their class teacher an email. The file section is the area I found myself using the most at the moment, which is where the teacher can upload their resources for students to have access to at home. And also moving along those tabs, you'll see an assignment section. And again, this is where tasks can be set, surveys, quizzes can be entered. In the file section, just some more information there about how you can click on to different lesson materials. The teacher will upload their documents for the pupils to be able to use. They can even download them if they prefer. It might be PowerPoints, it might be reading documents, work booklets. And as I said, if students want to, they can also download those materials to have on their own device if they would prefer. In the future, what may be possible, and another reason for us using Microsoft Teams, is that live lessons can be streamed from this. We will of course contact parents and carers to get permission, and that information may come out very soon, just to make sure that we have permission to be able to live stream a lesson. So potentially a student could be at home and the rest of the class could be in their classroom with their teacher, and I could ring through to that student if I'm teaching an REP lesson, and they could see my PowerPoint, hear me talking, and they could still have access to the lesson even whilst at home. For a pupil to join, they would just click on the Join Now button after having an invitation sent to them. We've disabled all the cameras, so a student at home's camera would not be working. The only thing that they'd be able to use would be their microphone. That would be up to the teacher to decide if they would like them to use that to take part in the lesson and ask questions. But there's also the option, if you have a look on the right of the screen in the images, there's an icon for raising your hand, and you can also type in some questions. So it's a great way for a student at home to still feel like they're in the classroom learning with their teacher. At the moment, just to say, and I've not mentioned it yet, that students up to now in form time have received or listened to an assembly from myself, just talking through Teams, just so that they have an understanding of how this will work for them if they find themselves at home. I've also emailed them all on their school email address a pupil-friendly guide for them to use. And in addition, some of them in their IT lessons have been able to use the beginning of their lesson just to log into Teams and have a look at how it all works. But on top of that, with the students that are in, we're going to hold some drop-in sessions for them and just do a bit of training so that pupils are really confident in how to use Microsoft Teams. So thank you very much for joining me today for the Teaching and Learning hybrid presentation. If you've got any questions at all after that, this has been recorded, so we will send out a link if anyone would like to watch it again. For anyone obviously that wasn't able to join us tonight, they can still have access to this. Please use my email address, amckenzie@clcc.college, if you have any questions at all you'd like to ask regarding Microsoft Teams and teaching and learning in general at the college. I'd be more than happy to give you a call back or to reply to your email. Thank you.